And we are live. What is up, people? It is a Friday night.
Hell yeah.
We already have some people watching, so we'll just go ahead and move along and kick things off, I suppose. But we are here to start the hashtag TQIF lineup. We're going to have a Tex-Trek discussion on these 23 weeks of Star Trek, a season of Lower Decks, a season of Discovery, and then we're going to follow that up on Starfleet Boys channel with some late night goodness. So
yeah,
without further ado,
not the same late night goodness of chaos we had last week. Just FYI.
yeah, well, we can issue an apology for that.
My God, what happened?
You don't want to know.
Oh, I think I do.
Now I do.
So we're just gonna go clockwise for our intro of like, hi, I'm everybody. So like me, PJ, Dave, Brian, then Starfleet Boy.
Sounds good.
All right. I'm Fathery.
I'm PJ.
This is Dave.
This is Brian.
And this is Starfleet Boy.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 132nd installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we talk all about Star Trek all the time. And tonight is a bittersweet moment as we say goodbye to our 23 weeks of consecutive Star Trek. I think my screen is lagging. Am I frozen again?
Uh-oh. Clear that cache.
You're not frozen on my screen.
I thought I finally fixed the
Frozen,
hollow projectors on the Starship Texas.
Rip those suckers
I
out.
guess not. No, we are here to
Yeah, you're freezing up, dude.
Okay, I'll stop it. I thought I could get this last live that we did. I thought it would work, but apparently not.
I'll take this opportunity to say hi to Give Sahil a medal and EGT.
Oh, wow.
And Braxton, what?
Yeah, Starfleet Boy, say hi to everyone who's checking us out live.
Yo, hello everyone. Thank you for coming to this 23 weeks of Star Trek celebration on Tex-Trek. So excited we actually got PJ here. That's like insane to have PJ here at this hour. He's usually a night owl, I think. And we're waiting for Father to clear his cache. So now he's on mute. He's saying something, but we can't hear him.
So
Is he saying that?
what time is it where you are, PJ?
It's I can't even remember what time. 10:04.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Not too bad. By the way, I was looking at our commenter, King Sahil medal, and I was thinking that that guy should get a short trek. That character.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I don't know that they are.
The actor's like super awesome too. I follow him on Twitter and he's really neat. And now I'm interested in his other projects. And I can't remember his name.
Yeah, no, I liked what he brought to it, and honestly, that was sort of one of my disappointments. It became pretty clear about halfway through the season that he was going to be a bookend character probably, but not really get to play any role. So I was sad.
I'm sure he had
communications were such a vital thing in the in this setting that he, had he been the kind of the facilitator of that stuff, guy who had like read up on all this tech, he just couldn't apply it for all these years, and he would be able to do cool stuff, but maybe in a short trek.
I think they've got to do something that's fun to cover that year that Burnham was like going around being a courier. That would be neat, and I bet we get a lot of Sahil action in that one in
I
that
can see that.
time period.
I don't know if we'll see him again, but I think there will be some short treks in 2021 because it's going to be a long time before we get to the next season of live action Star Trek, and they're going to want to keep people subscribed.
They could have pulled a really good twist and had him become captain of Discovery. Saru is leaving, and Burnham comes up, and Vance is like, "Well, I know Saru recommended you, but I'm going with this guy."
my long shot bet for this season was that it was going to be a surprise captain, like someone just totally knew. But
Oh, interesting.
I was definitely wrong about that.
Yeah, I told you were going to be wrong about that.
You know me.
One thing that for sure that Discovery does is it's usually pretty deeply entrenched with its character arcs and its kind of some of the soap operatics and stuff between them, so they don't tend to pull surprises out. They want to dig into what they got.
All right. Well, I think I deactivated my hollow projectors, so
all right.
We'll just talk about what our main topics are tonight, and we have 2 topics for you.
Ooh,
one is going to be Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1, and then after that, we'll talk about Star Trek Discovery Season 3. We just had this very unprecedented 23 consecutive weeks of Star Trek. That is a franchise first in 55 years. That has never happened before. So that was really cool. And now I'm depressed because I want more, damn it. I want 52 consecutive weeks of Star Trek.
Father, it's
Every
time
year.
to throw yourself at the fanfic.
No, I want it to be like real canonical stuff.
All right, how about somewhere in between? How about some IDW comics?
Yeah, those are really good on occasion. So I'll have to catch up on some of those. I'm behind on a few, but so just starting off, we'll talk about Star Trek Discovery Lower Decks. We didn't get a chance to talk about the entire season as a whole. It was 1 week Lower Decks and then the next week Discovery, so there was no gap, which I'm not complaining. But otherwise, we probably would have done like a season overview. So we're just going to go ahead and do that now. I'd like each person to just kind of say like their general thoughts or like general impression on like the entire season, and then we can kind of discuss them ourselves. PJ, I'll let you go ahead and go first. What was your kind of overall takeaway of Star Trek Lower Decks Season 1?
Well, a breath of fresh air, a cure to depression. One of the best shows of 2020, and not the best animated show. I think Solar Opposites is like number 1 for me, but which Mike McMahon also created. So Mike McMahon is like up on my list of guys they should really like consider giving more power to, because I know he's in this realm where he's like kind of making fun of Trek but honoring it at the same time with like an umpteenth amount of Easter eggs and references and stuff like that. So all of that I enjoyed throughout, and the absurdity of it. Like one of my favorite episodes is Terminal Provocations, and that's just like so bonkers, and like I just love it. So none of the episodes are bad, and even the worst episode, I think, which is Much Ado About Boimler, I didn't really like, but it's still a good episode, you know what I mean? Like, even the worst episode is good. So it's the best Trek I've seen in years. That's my opinion.
Cool. Dave, what was your take on Lower Decks Season 1?
You know how sometimes people are like, when they're talking about like voting booth stuff, they'll be like, oh, my vote's going to cancel out your vote. My vote's going to cancel out PJ's vote. So I never plugged into Lower Decks. I kind of didn't expect to, and I wasn't able to. There's no big surprise there. It's why I wasn't regularly on y'all's discussions of it. I couldn't do it, but I also didn't want to be a Debbie Downer and all that. I don't actually have a whole lot to add, and I'll kind of sit back and let y'all talk more about this in general. But for me, it's just there's a style of kind of animation and humor that's a little bit too. It's like everybody is turned up to 10 or 11. everybody's a little coked up sounding all the time. And sometimes even Disney and Pixar do that too. And I kind of like their movies, but for the most part, but the characters that are just a little that turned up from reality, it's kind of off-putting to me. And so I never plugged into the humor. I sort of like bits and pieces of the drama. I did watch it all. I have seen it all. But yeah, it never had its breakthrough for me. So I was the man who did not laugh. Brian, what do you got?
I'm kind of somewhere in between with you guys. I will absolutely say that this was a show that was at least by the third episode anyway was exactly what they wanted it to be, and it succeeded. And as far as succeeding at its goals, it might be the most successful season one of any Star Trek. But the goals themselves were not things that entirely gelled with me. And I do love that if we're going to have all these different Star Trek series, I want them all to be very different. I want them to try new things. And so I refuse to criticize them for creating the show and then making it exactly what they wanted it to be very successfully. Even if it's not quite what I wanted, I guess I come to Star Trek when I want something a little more serious than Doctor Who or Star Wars. And so for something that silly, it's always going to feel a little like a little weird to me. That said, episode 9, was it? The one on the holodeck. What was the name of that one?
Crisis Point.
Crisis Point was amazing and probably would make my top 10 Star Trek episodes ever. So it was like they deliberately knew I was complaining and wrote an episode designed to win me over. And as long as I'm getting one of those every season, I'll be there every season just for that. And there was, I can't deny, I laughed my ass off most of the episodes. I just don't know. I felt guilty about laughing at Star Trek. And so that was a disquieting feeling. But I'd be lying if I didn't say I laughed long and hard at it. So I guess there's my ambivalent mixed feeling review.
Cool. Well, Starfleet Boy, what about yourself?
Sometimes going last is awesome because I get to just say I agree completely with PJ and Brian.
Hey, I'm going last.
Oh, that's right. So. Going last in the panel. You're the host.
I'm the headliner. Going with me.
Sorry. All right. Well, the only thing I'll add to that though is that something. Who said it in the chat? I think it was Blue. Lower Decks is really awesome, though you can't deny that it's something unconventional and also completely new for any franchise. And I agree. Like, I remember us talking about how like I couldn't think of another instance of like where a show was just like so meta or like so, you know, like just so it's fan service, but it was also like really great. Like, so the stories were fresh and awesome. Not fresh, but you know, they were just a great fresh take on stuff that we really love about Star Trek. And I love all the characters, and I just needed a laugh at the end of like some shitty weeks. And Lower Decks, I couldn't think of a better way to laugh at something than Star Trek, which we always make fun of it anyways among friends and fans. And so it was great to kind of like have that experience with everyone. So yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll just go ahead and give my thoughts, but building on what you were just ending on, Starfleet Boy, about, you know, having this nice happy thing to return to. I actually rewatched the entire season like 2 weeks ago. When we were in like the last week of Discovery, I started rewatching Lower Decks in preparation for this, just to refresh myself on it. And watching like that first episode was so fun to just return to those characters and to the USS Cerritos. And it's kind of like our friend Gary or Trekker Prize, how he describes Star Trek like how Guinan described the Nexus and Star Trek Generations, how it was like happiness and joy, as if like joy was something you could wrap up in like a warm blanket. You know, that's how Gary has always like described Star Trek, and to the point where he started the Warm Blanket podcast. And That's exactly how I felt watching this episode of Lower Decks. It was like a return, like this nice, comfortable, like warm blanket. I could just like wrap myself up in and have fun. And I don't know, maybe I was just like in a bad mood and I needed that to cheer me up or what. And seeing that trailer at the end of the first episode, I'd never watched that when it first released. I stopped watching when the trailers come on because I don't want to spoil the next episode. So this was the first time I watched like that season-long sizzle reel that they have. And when I saw that and like the clips they put together in that, I just got so excited to revisit this entire season of the show that I really like. And yeah, it is like unusual. It is definitely, breaking the mold to do an animated comedy Star Trek. But I want the diversity of shows. If we're going to have all these multiple shows on the air, I think it is a great inclusion. I think it also balances out some of the things that we're missing in Picard or Discovery. It was nice to come to a place that's not as hyper violent or as like galactic level, like high stakes that like the apocalypse is about to happen. It's nice just to see like a more kind of like wholesome, cheerier Star Trek. I've never treated Star Trek as like a comfort food or said like I like watching it because it's like reassuring. I know everything's going to be okay in the end. I know a lot of fans describe Star Trek that way, and that's why they like it, and that's why they return to it. I was never like a comfort food type watcher, but I guess I am now with Lower Decks. That being said, every episode did have at least one thing in there that I thought was like a little too stupid. That like I wish they had like dialed it back. But overall, I enjoyed all the episodes. The only one that I kind of dislike, sorry PJ, but it's actually what is it? The one that you just mentioned,
Terminal Provocations.
Terminal Provocations, yeah, with Fletcher.
It's comedic, brilliant, and Badgie, right?
Yeah. I'm actually wearing a Badgie T-shirt. I think that's my least favorite episode. But like I had a great time. Brian, I definitely agree with you on Crisis Point being a really phenomenal episode of not just Lower Decks, but of Star Trek in general. And that season finale. I was telling Dave the other day that I actually, like, now that I think about it, I think this is probably the best season finale we've gotten since 1999 when DS9 went off the air. I can't think of anything like the last two seasons of Voyager or Enterprise or Discovery or Picard that like ended on a stronger high note. So that's where I'm at with Lower Decks. I do want to ask, does anyone have like some other favorites? Those were mine, like the last two episodes. I also like really like the first three. I thought were pretty strong, and then Cupid's Errant Arrow. I got a big kick out of just exploring Boimler's love life. I thought was kind of hilarious. I thought that was like just like a cool sci-fi episode, and like the rich people on the planet, all that stuff. But what about y'all? What were some of the highlights?
Well, I do have to jump in and say, clearly you love the show if you have the T-shirt for your least favorite episode.
He's so iconic. Program, he gets loot crates of T-shirts.
No, I actually like chose this T-shirt, but I just think Badgie is. I'm not even saying like I love like the concept of Badgie. I think he's like a really great mascot for Lower Decks. Love it or hate it. I think Badgie kind of like represents the show in a lot of ways.
He showed up in the season finale, right?
Yeah, and I absolutely love that episode. So
he was responsible for the Bear Pack's leader falling. For Shax. I loved Crisis Point and the finale. I think those are my two favorite, but I really love them all. Like I can't think of one episode that I didn't really just enjoy.
Veritas was good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was episode 8.
Kurtwood Smith.
Oh, was he? Did he do a voice? In that?
He was the prosecutor.
So many people did voices. Yeah, he was one of them.
And it has just this absurd, silly ending where it's like, it's not a trial. It's
a party.
Just customary.
Oh, right.
I was actually thinking about that episode the other day, and I thought they did the same gimmick effectively in that DS9 episode, season 1, where the guys put them all in a game. Move Along Home, yes. But this was done much better.
Count to 4, Alamarain, then 3 more.
Yeah. Both of them have the same twist. What looks like a very dangerous situation was just some aliens having fun, and they're kind of shocked that no one else realized it. But I will say Lower Decks did it better. There wasn't enough other interesting things to justify Move Along Home for 40 minutes, even if it did have a good twist at the end. Whereas this had something to chew on all the way through.
Yeah.
Hey, Father, I'm going to interrupt for just a second. I was hoping you would do the Lower Decks after Discovery, but I really don't have anything good to contribute, so I'm going to bow out of this for a little while, and I'll come jump back in when y'all are ready to hit Disco. So don't mind me. I'm off looking scornfully at y'all as you enjoy this show.
Well, I was going to complain about some stuff too, but
Wow, he dislikes.
What's this I hear about complaints? Well, I may be around. I don't want to like just be like the guy who's like, well, I guess whatever. You like that? Okay. Like for like 30, 40 minutes or whatever.
It would actually be very Lower Decks if you were that guy.
Since you weren't there for most of the podcast, I was really looking forward to your comments, even if they were negative, just hearing your thoughts on it. But I never really got that.
Dave, just tell us like the one thing that you liked the most and the one thing you hated the most.
Oh God, I didn't like anything on that show. I like.
You say you liked the Titan. Or you liked?
Okay, yeah. I liked seeing that. I think I messaged you this, Father. On Discovery, I can think of several between that and Picard several times when they've broken out the theme of Star Trek shows, and I've never quite felt it for the most part. They dropped the Voyager theme in with some Seven stuff, and then they, of course, threw out the TOS theme was it in the season finale of Discovery. Yeah, and. It usually seems to hit at a time when I'm not really liking what they're doing. So although I can respect the idea, like it could be something that really gets to me when they do that. Most of the time it hadn't worked. I thought that the Jerry Goldsmith's TNG theme when the Titan sweeps in and pew-pews a bunch of bad guy packlets was pretty cool and better than the live action counterparts recently. So there's that. What did I dislike the most? It's not, there was no like one specific scene that I was like, that's ridiculous or whatever. It was all kind of equally goofy. I think let's see, what was I gonna say?
I have a question for you, Dave. Do you consider would you be able to consider this particular animated series canon?
Not really. Kind of, sort of.
I agree with you there. Yeah.
I don't actually usually think of those kind of things. Canon isn't something that affects my enjoyment of stuff too much, but to me, this is sort of something I guess I've done with sort of some superhero comics and stuff before, and the notion of it that this might be a sort of, we even talked about this on the podcast, a telling that somebody's spinning a story for their buddy drunk at a bar or whatever, like, oh, let me tell you about this thing that happened with Mariner and Boimler the other week, and they tell a kind of goofy, exaggerated version, but the basic core events happened. I'm okay with it. I think if all the core events were true, but the sort of the silly stuff was
so this is Mariner pretty heavily into drink number 6 at a bar, telling of what she's been up to for the last year in your
exactly. I can work with that. But yes, if say the Apocalypse were to show up on Picard and reflect what's going on here, or I think I'd prefer not to see Badgie. Badgie fighting it out with what's the sphere data computer?
Zora.
Zora. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd probably watch an animated little short that had him fighting it out.
It would work to put Zora into a Lower Decks type show better than it would work to take Badgie and put him in a Discovery type show.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm not going to be particularly offended if they reference some of the events in there, or somebody's looking at a list of officers one time on Discovery and they see Mariner and Boimler in there. That I'm not going to be like, fuck.
Now I want them to do a time travel episode where they run into the Discovery crew and all the Discovery stuff is played completely straight, just like it is on the live action version, and they're all like, "Oh my God, this place is so violent and dark, and nobody has any fun."
They need to have like an injury to the eye in the style of.
Yeah.
Is that a Kurtzman thing? Did we determine?
Well,
We don't know.
Rutherford is already there, but
Dave, I couldn't
that's
watch. I couldn't watch Beavis and Butthead because of the animation style.
Oh, interesting.
Hmm.
I kind of
just
like
couldn't get
Beavis
into
and
it.
Butthead in like the small doses. I think I like. And I'm not usually actually a big comedy animation guy, but Mike Judge, that King of the Hill was like much better. But there were the sort of the dry roots of it in Beavis and Butthead, I guess.
Mike Judge from Texas.
Yep.
Shout out. And Dave, if you need to go, I understand.
I'm gonna go make a drink or something.
We'll switch gears in like 20 minutes.
Yeah, cool. I'll be back and around.
But in the live chat, Andrew Hayes is asking me, Fathery, was there any 47 references in Lower Decks? I can't recall, LOL. And Andrew, there were at least 2 in the episode Temporal Edict. That was the one where the captain put everyone on a timer to complete their assignments. Anytime Boimler did something like really competent or heroic, there was always a 47 on a ticking clock somewhere in the background. And I think there might have been another one, but that's the one that I recall right off the top of my head. Starfleet Boy, what was your favorite part of Lower Decks? Your favorite episode? Any characters that really stood out?
Yeah, I think I love Boyms and Mariner. I think actually all of them. Like I'm starting to think of all the great moments with each of them. Something that really was one of my favorite moments was the Ascension. What was the name of the episode where was it Ascension? Like what was that? What was the episode called where
that was a Moist Vessel, wasn't it?
Moist Vessels, thank you. Where I'm calling it Ascension, which is probably another Star Trek episode, but I really enjoyed that. And I'm a big fan of Haley Joel Osment as an adult. I think he's really funny and like I like him in Future Man. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
No, I haven't seen him in anything except for that Bruce Willis movie.
Oh wow, that's right. But yeah, he's phenomenal. And when I realized that was him, it was just like it was like a real delightful moment for me. So I really liked that. And then I liked everything that was happening in that episode with the ship, the encounter at Farpoint ending, and like the character finally he's this like he's an imposter the whole time, but at the end he actually does hey,
sometimes you gotta fake it till you make it, baby.
Yeah. Like I thought the gags worked, and I just really I think Tendi, it made Tendi a little bit more of a complex character, I thought. And I thought that was a great moment for that character because she was kind of like just always happy before that, and then we find out there's a little more depth to that, and so I really liked it. So yeah, I think those kinds of, that's the thing about Lower Decks is like Dave was saying earlier, like how it's not canon or all that, but I bet you could really
in his mind he says it's not.
I know.
Can I say something about that? I mean, he made a point about the main story points that happen. You can kind of imagine that the live action version of all of these episodes excluded the absurdity. You know what I mean? They were different in a way and enough in my mind that I could say, yes, Mariner and Boimler are real, Cerritos was real. The baseline of what happened in the season could have happened in live action, but there are some things like Terminal Provocations, which is the most absurd episode of the entire season. You can't do that in live action. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would probably enjoy it more.
It's like the reverse of what the motion picture novelization, I think, tried to do with the original series. I think there's a suggestion. You know what I'm talking about, right, Father? It's like, oh, yeah. There's like there's a suggestion that the original series are like, recreations of the actual adventures, and that and so on and so forth. So
if that's what you want to tell yourself, for your head canon, then more power
that's
to
fine.
you. Everyone should interpret it however they choose to interpret it. I mean, like for me, I'll go by the rules. Like if it's on screen, then it's canon, then it happens. And that's probably why like some of the things like terminal provocations, I think like go a little too far, kind of bother me. But no, like it's definitely I think that's kind of open to interpretation. Just like I think the official rules are just if it's on screen. It's canon,
the word canon. I mean, if you say head canon, that's fine. But if you say canon, that's kind of defined by CBS and things. So you can say it breaks continuity. And that maybe it happens in an alternate timeline, but to say it's not canon, at least not without sticking the word head in there, seems like just deliberately malforming words or butchering the definitions of things.
Well, let's just say in Picard, Captain Boimler or some kind of like Boimler is lieutenant or first officer shows up. He's played. Or Captain Mariner shows up, like they're aged up a little to fit the time, and they meet Riker and they reminisce about that time the Titans swooped in and saved their asses against the Packlids and stuff like that.
There's that
I
new
could
book.
totally buy that. You know what I mean?
There's that Riker Troy on the Titan book. It's a Picard prequel that just came out, I think, last week. I have not read it, but someone told me that there is a reference to Lower Decks in there.
Cool. That's awesome. You could actually see the whole Packlet thing even happening in my mind. I think everything, just like what PJ was saying, like is plausible, but not the absurd, not the extreme absurdity of it. But you could see the Packlets making a move like that and like being, somewhat formidable. And then you could also see like in Picard era, Riker laughing about it. And if it were a scene that if it was one of those off scenes in 10 Forward where someone just like makes a reference to something we'll never see, that's what Lower Decks is, right? Like it's that reference to something we'll never see, which is another thing that I love about it.
Yeah. But we do see it because we watch the show.
No, I know. I don't know what I was being. I was being sanctimonious.
I'll say this about we're talking a lot about like the Packlids and stuff. Is that those last 2 episodes added this gravitas to the show that really made me plug. It was something that like the show had kind of been missing. And the way that like they took the serious threats so serious when it finally happened in the finale episode. When you get that sequence of the USS Solvang being destroyed by that Packlid ship, before we knew it was a Packlid ship, it's like so scary and like stressful and like painful to like watch like the Starfleet ship get destroyed like that.
Remember the socks though. It is. You're right. You're right about everything you're saying.
Yeah.
But right before that, there was the
right after some goofy stuff that I thought was a bit too goofy. But like that had so much weight and impact and. Yeah. A lot of the times when we see like deadly things in Discovery or Picard, it doesn't have the same weight, and so I thought that was a really cool thing that they're allowed to do in Lower Decks by being so funny and lighthearted. It wouldn't be funny if people were dying like in every episode, like when there's like a zombie outbreak and like everyone's cured at the end and no one died, we can laugh at it. If there's like people that like are killed in some of these antics, that wouldn't be as humorous. But then when they do like a serious thing, they're able to like switch gears. And I really like the way that the show was able to kind of change stance and go to like a more like serious mode when it needed to. And that ending, that finale cliffhanger of Boimler on the Titan, that is a big hook. A big draw to come back for season 2. I want to see what happens with him and Mariner. I enjoyed that rivalry turn into a friendship, and how it took a bitter turn because she's mad that he abandoned her. So I really want to see what happens next. What were y'all's thoughts? I guess on like the ending, and are you looking forward to seeing where that goes in season 2?
Yeah, well, I definitely thought the last 2 episodes were the strongest. They did a lot to redeem the show and make me feel it was something more than just jokes. Yuck. And those last 2, especially the 9, but also 10, they were very strong. And I guess it feels to me less of a cliffhanger and more of tune in next season and you get to see Riker and Troy and the Titan. It feels like to me, but that's okay. I'll shill for that or whatever. I'll show up for that. And they definitely started acknowledging that Mariner was acting out and that her behavior was dysfunctional. At least sometimes, I thought went a long ways to making me feel like this show might be better than I thought it was, because it seemed to spend most of the episodes just saying, "Isn't Mariner great?" as she does all these gets up to all these shenanigans, and I was kind of like, no, she's kind of causing problems and hurting people, but nobody's calling her on it. And I was kind of glad to see, okay, yeah, they are going to call her on it. It is actually the show will actually acknowledge that, and thus, just by being a little more introspective, they earned a lot more affection from me and stuff on it. So yeah, I did enjoy that. I also, as far as how the show the season ended, it kind of felt like they were making a bit of a statement about Star Trek in general, or about the Federation, that this idea that that Starfleet is bad at maintaining things. They set things up, they discover things, but they don't necessarily maintain them well. They kind of move on, and things can then start to crumble away without Starfleet coming out back to help out and check on things. And there were a lot of stories that kind of seemed to vaguely go along with that idea that the Cerritos is running around putting out these fires in places that had been fixed by ships like the Enterprise in the past, but now things were perhaps perhaps less becoming less stable. And it kind of felt to me like the show had this more DS9 please, less TNG, where TNG was always discover the new thing, planet of a week, and then move on. DS9 was about building community and building stability and creating a healthy, sustainable structures. And the show seemed to have a sort of a message, but maybe I'm reading too much into that.
No, I definitely agree with you on that, Brian. And I was a little conflicted about how I felt about that notion of Starfleet is good at, like Mariner says, at exploration, but not as good at maintaining. And I came around to it because I think the notion of the second contact ship, it's a lot less glamorous than being the first contact ship, which is, typically in the Star Trek we see, the episodes we see, the Enterprise. But it kind of gives this show purpose and a mission statement about, like, adding value to, like, that second contact, about, like, there needs to be a guy out there, following up on Beta 3 and the Packlets and stuff like that. And so I kind of like that kind of being incorporated into, like, the show's mission statement. And I could see that being used for more, humorous stuff. And they could also milk some serious stories if they are going to do more serious stories, like we kind of saw it in the season finale. So I'm interested to see where they take that in season 2, and also what they do with the character dynamic between Captain Freeman and Ensign Mariner, how they kind of embody that lower deck commanding officer dynamic in their dysfunctional mother-daughter dynamic. And I get the feeling that there are kind of arcs planned that we've barely tapped into, we've barely started. This first season is just very much about, like, introductions, and now we'll kind of see, like, where these dynamics between the characters can grow and evolve. But on that note, does anyone have, like, any standout characters that they want to talk about? Like mine is Mariner. I think she's one of the most relatable characters in Star Trek. I don't know what that says about myself, but I also like that they did eventually show that, well, like Brian was saying, there is some dysfunction to her, even though she tries to come off as like this perfect whiz kid who's just this confident badass at everything. Like, no, like, she actually has, like, some issues she needs to work out. I think the relationship between her and Boimler can play out in interesting ways. How they both have, like, so much potential. He is kind of like 30% a really good Starfleet officer. He's very efficient at a lot of things. He's very like by the book, can get a lot of things done, kind of well-rounded and like skill sets, it would seem. But then he has like 70% of like, well, he gets too nervous, or like he's a bit of a scaredy cat, or like he can't like break the rules or get like too like creative or outside the box. And I think Mariner's kind of the other way around. I think Mariner's like 70% Starfleet badass, and then she has like this 30% dysfunction. And I feel like the two of these characters together will balance each other out and will make each other a better person, a better Starfleet officer by the end of the show. But what about the rest of y'all? Who wants to talk about like some of the characters that they like, or some of the relationships?
I thought the characters were all great in Veritas. I thought that was like a standout episode because it had that cool, secret mission, and like, just like finding out about like what was the crew with the blinds on, with the sensors on their eyes,
special
like,
ops guys,
special ops guys.
guys.
Like, there's just so many gags, and we got so many, like we got to see the Vulcan Museum, and like Rutherford in that episode. I keep.
It was a good showcase. It was a good showcase of all the characters.
A great showcase, and I think, were we talking about on this discussion about how that could have even been a pilot? Kind of like that was like such a good episode to introduce everyone. Sort of. I don't know if we were talking about that here or on the other.
Yeah,
I
recall that. Yeah.
I think Mariner's probably the most obnoxious character because she's the one who most feels like she couldn't actually exist in Starfleet as my brain envisions it, at least as far as it lasting very long.
Nepotism.
Well, yes, but even there comes a point where she doesn't even want to be there. Nepotism works, but you have to have the other person willing to take advantage of it. Whereas I like Tendi just because she felt like the most plausible character, as far as I could absolutely see. I could see her in showing up in Picard or something, and they wouldn't have to turn her down a bunch. Yes, she's kind of turned up to 8 or 9, but she also felt like it was a believable 8 or 9. That there are people who are like that a lot of the time, and so. So yeah, I think Tendi was probably my favorite. It was interesting. My best friend loved Mariner as well. So there's clearly a lot of love for her out there, even if I was kind of struggling to come to terms with the character. I would say I think the defining trait of Boimler is he does a good job if he gets time to do his homework. As long as he gets time to do his research and prepare for the thing, he usually does a pretty good job. It's just that there's so much unprepared stuff that happens, and he just goes to pieces when he has to improvise.
Yeah, he can't improvise. Yeah. That also might come from like a lack of confidence too, where he kind of needs to do his homework in order to like feel more confident about doing something. So that might be something that he can learn from Mariner.
Yeah, whereas Mariner never prepares for everything, so it's always improv. So
right.
It doesn't matter.
PJ, what about you? What were some of the standout characters for you?
Rutherford, like for sure. He's the most likable character in the entire show. Tendi's okay. Mariner, she grows on you. By the end, I'm like really... I'm for her, but I'm kind of like delighted in the fact that she's so irritated that Boimler gets to go on the Titan, and she's really pissed off. So I like that aspect, like how they. But Shax was cool. I like Captain Freeman. I like Ransom. I like them all really, but my favorite is probably Rutherford upon like rewatch.
That's interesting because Rutherford, to me, he's the one who seems the most like a cartoon character with the least amount of depth, but they kind of set up a story for him with his whole like memory being erased. I don't know if they're going to build on that in season 2 or kind of just the reset
I think
button.
So. I think
I'd like to see them build on it.
Yeah, and Tendi's going to be like his she's going to help him become Rutherford again, I guess.
Tendi is so like how could anyone not like Tendi? It's like that was like her whole thing. Like she hates like when people don't like her, which I know people that are like that in real life. And so like they come up as like real sweet, and then like the other side of that coin, it's almost kind of like a selfish desire to be like real sweet and nice to everyone because like it crushes them to not be liked. So they, but yeah, and Noelle Wells, who does the voice, is from Texas, so I got to give her a shout out.
She was also in Saturday Night Live for a bit.
Yeah, she was. And all these people are really funny. Like they did a really good job with the casting. And they all like have like the perfect voices for these characters. So I'm glad that all these people are coming back, with the exception of poor old Shax. But at least he went out the way he wanted to go out. He's like, "This is the greatest day of my life."
It was really awesome. Ransom stood out to me too among the upper deckers. Like I really liked his character. I like Jerry O'Connell a lot, like just in real life, and I grew up watching all his shows. I didn't realize how much Jerry O'Connell stuff I had seen until like I started realizing it, and then it was like, oh yeah,
he just shows up in everything.
He's really on everything. But I mean, I as a kid, like I watched My Secret Identity. That was like my favorite show. Like I wanted to be that character. I wanted to get superpowers and stuff like that. So
he plays Sheldon's older brother in Big Bang Theory, so that was cool.
That's
well, let me ask Ollie on this. The last thing, just one last thing on Lower Decks, then we'll move on. Was there anything that kind of like disappointed you in the show, or that you hope that they'll do better in season 2, or that you feel like they just really dropped the ball on? Like one thing for me is I really liked in the 3rd episode when they set up that attraction between Ransom and Mariner on the subject of ransom. And I kind of hate that never went anywhere. They kind of hint at it in the episode with the substitute captain when she's like, "So have you seen Ransom's torpedo?" Or whatever she said, which I thought was kind of like a stupid thing to say anyways. But I mean, like, I thought that would be really cool if these if these two characters, it would be like that classic like kind of opposites attract, and like they seem like they'd make like a terrible couple, but you can't pick who you fall for. So it'd be one of those like really exciting romances to watch play out. But I hope that goes somewhere in season 2. I'll be disappointed if we never touch it again.
I think there's like a 90% chance that they're gonna do something with that.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Let's see. I mean, the stuff a lot of the stuff that was really driving me nuts at the beginning of the series, they kind of did address by the end of it. So I'm trying to think of what did they not get around to addressing? I know. I was hoping having an Orion character, we'd learn a significant amount about Orion culture.
Me too.
They crop up a whole lot in my role-playing games, and because I have a player who always plays one, but and I'm always kind of would like some more. I'm always falling back on all the old FASA role-playing game books for material on them because there's not a lot out there canonical, so I would have liked to have had. I would like to have more of Tendy's culture and what as far as her home culture, or at least a reason why, if she doesn't do any of that Orion culture stuff, like, oh well, yeah, I mean, my parents hated the whole pirate thing and we have nothing to do with that anymore, and we decided we were going to live like standard Federation citizens all the way, or something, kind of like Ensign Rowe kind of said she rejected the religious beliefs of the Bajorans, as I recall. So, and even that would be something, because it gives us a shade of how the different factions and branches of Orion culture interact with each other.
Yeah, totally. That was something that I asked for. And when me and Truck on the Tube actually did a Tex-Trek podcast on the top 5 things we wanted to see in Lower Decks, and that was the one that like I didn't get. I wanted to see the Orion culture explored with an Orion character, but I think my other ones were I wanted a non-TNG cameo, and I think I got that with Landru. I wanted a animated series connection, and we got that a few of them. I wanted to laugh in every episode, and I did that. So most of the things I asked for, I got, but unfortunately, I didn't get that deeper exploration of the Orion culture. I think it'd be funny if we meet like Tendy's family, and her dad is like a Tony Soprano type, like Mafia Don or something. They're all like criminals and stuff. I think
Would you get to-
a little bit.
Who would you want to guest star as Tendy's father? Like, what actor would you want to voice that?
Get who would I want? I don't know. There's so many people who do like a good like kind of like Marlon Brando type, or like maybe like
It should be Joe Montana.
Yeah, we got. I got Dave to come back.
Oh, who did they get in that first episode of Mandalorian season 2 to be the gangster there? John Leguizamo. How do you say his name?
John Leguizamo.
Yeah.
He did like a really good like mafia voice for like that fat alien watching the pigmen fight.
Yes, the Cyclops alien.
Yeah,
guy.
he's a Cyclops dude. So
I want what Blue suggested to happen. I don't know where or how it would happen, but you guys should do a role-playing game, a Star Trek role-playing game online with Brian as the GM. Here. That's.
I would love to do that, but Brian says he's not good at doing like short campaigns. So we could do like an ongoing series.
I think it should be.
I'm terrible at doing one shots, so it would have to be like at least a 4-episode thing or something to tell any story.
Like totally doable. But there's like so many weeks of no Star Trek, right?
If you guys are interested, I could throw something together.
Dave is good at one shot stuff, though. I've played in some Dave RPGs.
I would be happy to be a PC. So.
Yeah, one shots are where that is more of my thing. But I haven't run a lot of Star Trek games, just a handful over the years.
I just know that all the writers from Discovery would be watching us.
That's true.
I will warn you. There's it can be tricky if you're the GM who's not as up on the Star Trek trivia as your players are. So that's probably true of almost any, big complex gaming universe. But so there is.
I think the correct thing to do in that is, as the player, you can maybe suggest things to the GM, but at the end of the day, like, it's his game, and if he says, that might be how it is in canon, but this is how it is in my game.
Yeah,
you have to just.
It's not as if Star Trek licensed stuff has not broken canon itself.
Continuity, right?
But yes, and thank you for correcting my gender usage, Star Trek. But I think that's all that we have to say on Lower Decks. I'm enjoying all of these comments we're getting in the live audience.
Exciting stuff going on in there.
Please continue and. Audience, give us some of your thoughts on Star Trek Discovery Season 3, because we're going to talk about that starting now. We're just going to do the same thing we did a second ago, kind of each give our kind of opening thoughts, and then we'll have a deeper conversation. But this time, let's go in like the opposite order. Like I go first, and like we'll end on PJ. How's that sound?
That's some bizarro world shit.
Okay, well, so the Season 3, it had a lot of changes. This is the most drastic change in a show ever in Star Trek, I think. I don't know what else you would compare this to. Maybe like Deep Space Nine getting the Defiant in Season 3 might be like the closest thing. Just like conceptual shift to something very different. And
the only thing I could think of is not a show thing. Sorry to interrupt you, but it would be like from TOS to the movies. Like that's the only thing that I think comes close.
We're up from TOS to TAS.
Or TAS, yeah.
That really didn't change much, though.
It didn't. I was about to say.
That sort of works because the movies kind of moved to a sort of more action-centric, character-driven vibe, a little bit away from the high concepts of the standalone episodes. So that's a little bit about what's kind of changed here.
Especially if you cut it as from TAS to the motion picture. Whoa. That's a gear shift.
I'll go on, Father. What else?
There were a lot of things behind the camera that kind of changed too, like with Michelle Paradise taking over the writing and having like one consistent leader in the writer room for an entire season. First time it ever happened in the history of Discovery. And I think there were a lot of benefit to that. There were a lot of things that got better. Some things changed the same, and some of the problems I have with the show were still there, but some of the strengths were still there. And honestly, nothing got worse. So it's an overall like net positive for sure. And I just this last week, binge watched the entire season. I rewatched all 13 episodes, and I actually enjoyed it more the second time through. The problems I had before, like a lot of them, like weren't as big of a problem for me. I had some disappointments in the finale, but last night I watched the last 3 episodes back to back to back, and you kind of take it all in as like a 2-hour, 40-minute movie, like a big like Endgame or Infinity War type movie. And I like the things that I liked in the penultimate episode kind of canceled out some of my dislikes in the final episode. So it actually was a more enjoyable experience for you, or more balanced experience. I think the show has a lot more potential going into season 4 than I was kind of scared of the season 3. Are they going to be able to create like this future 32nd century? Are they going to be able to pull all that off? And now that they've done that, I'm very excited about season 4. The new characters they introduced, I was kind of sad to see Anson Mount go away, but hey, we have Admiral Vance, we have Kovich, we have Book, Adira, Gray. I love all these new characters. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think I after rewatching season 3, I think I can firmly say that even though I don't think season 3 was perfect, I think that the show has done its best season to date, and I am very excited about season 4. There are some things I would still like to see them handle a little bit better, maybe like a little bit less like the big actiony climactic season finale. But hey, overall, this was a much more tame season of Discovery. There weren't as many big actiony set pieces. I take that back. It's not that there were less of that, but there were more like slow, talky moments, like Unification 3. That was just like a big courtroom drama. Or There Is a Tide, where we had all that negotiation stuff between Osira and Vance. So that was stuff that they weren't really doing a lot of in seasons 1 and 2 of Discovery. So it's not perfect, but pretty good and better than seasons 1 and 2. I'm excited for season 4. Starfleet Boy, what about you?
Same thing. The only thing I would add on to that is just that it really felt like Discovery was home. Like this felt like where Discovery should always have been, and it just I actually didn't realize how wonderful it is to be like free of like my Star Trek continuity qualms and knowledge until I saw it happening. Discovery season 1 and 2 with as much, especially season 2 was, I thought, a leap above season 1. Like as much as I enjoyed that, this was like 10 times more enjoyable just because I didn't have to think about all these things like, well, no, that doesn't fit here. Why do the Klingons look like that or this and that? And I know like, and I've made, for the most part, I've made peace with a lot of the things that Discovery decided to update and change, not fitting in with what I was expecting and what should kind of like, if you're a stickler for those things, should be. But yeah, season 3 just was free of all that, and I got to just really enjoy the show. And so my kind of mind, it was very liberating and nice to just sit back and relax and kind of enjoy the story that was being told. I definitely had my problems with it, with a few things here and there. But overall, it was just such a great season of Star Trek, period.
Hey, Starfleet Boy, you were saying that you think it's sort of where the show needs to be. Would you probably agree, though, that the first 2 seasons establishing it in the present ish of Kirk's era were necessary to get it to where it needed to be?
I think that if they had started it like with a ship that was lost in the future,
like in the 32nd century,
without any of that stuff, it could have been strong. But you're absolutely right. We can't just erase the other 2 seasons. So yes, this particular iteration of Discovery, what we got, does rely a little bit on things. But then at the same time, I would have to say that I think, and I'd love to see this in action, I would suggest for someone to just start with Discovery season 3 and see how lost they really are, because you don't really need to know a lot. Maybe the Mirror Universe stuff makes more sense, perhaps, and Giorgio in general. But outside of that, I think overall, I think you can still really follow along and really enjoy the ride.
Yeah, it'd be kind of interesting challenge. I'd be curious to hear from somebody who started on season 3.
Yeah.
I would say that the key thing they pull by having those previous seasons is they explain very clearly why our heroes don't know what the hell's going on, and thus they can feed that information to the audience in a natural way as our heroes uncover it. Whereas if they were a ship from the 32nd century, you think they'd kind of know all this stuff. I guess you could have just had...
my premise is start the show with a lost ship from a previous time period. Just start it like that. Like start from after they come through the wormhole. And that's what I was saying. So they would still be a ship from the past, but we didn't get all that. I'm saying if they if this was season 1 of Discovery, it would have been really just as powerful a season as it is now. It really stood on its own, I thought.
Yeah, I could see how you could make that work. You wouldn't want it to be all weird. You'd want it to look like these guys stepped right out of an episode of The Next Generation. This is absolutely the Star Trek we know, suddenly in a whole new world, so that we feel we can get on board with this crew immediately. Oh, that's the tactical officer, blah blah blah. There's the holodeck.
I mean, that would work for a lot of the characters because a lot of them don't have much development. The secondary characters.
Yeah.
But let me ask this before we move on to Brian's thoughts, if I can just ask a question. Do y'all think that there was any essential character development for Michael or Saru or Tilly or Stamets, the more central characters? Was there any essential character development in the first 2 seasons that would have been lost if we just skip past those and tell people to start?
I think so. Tilly has been on a journey. I think you could stage it so that it would still work, with Starfleet Boys Notion with a little retooling. But, I think that we've watched Saru grow, we've watched Michael grow, and sometimes I feel like there's somewhat inorganic growth spurts, but for sure Tilly, but it does feel like it has been a journey, and so I kind of wouldn't want to lose that.
Right. There's a few things that are more powerful because of the past 2 seasons. Like, for example, Burnham and Book feels better to me because we've had such a shitty relationship experience for poor Burnham, in season 1 where she's dating a psycho who's going to kill her. And then, so to see her finally happy. And then I think the whole power dynamic between Saru and Burnham works better knowing what came before as well.
I do think, now that you bring it up, Saru, I don't think I would have. I love Saru. I don't know if I would have loved him if I'd started with season 3. I think I would have just said, "Oh, this is the wussy captain, and we're just waiting around for Michael Burnham to take over because clearly she's the hot shit." Whereas having seen Saru in season 1 or 2 and getting to see how he can succeed and what he's good at, I was actually would have been quite happy with him continuing to remain captain for season 4. So there's a character I think that really would have been. They would have had to restructure things heavily to get me to really root for Saru and understand his whole alien background and all of that. And they would have had to rework a lot of stuff to make Saru work if they were starting with season 3.
And to Dig's point, Unification 3 wouldn't have been as good without season 2 and season 1 establishing a human raised on Vulcan and being the daughter of Sarek and the sister of Spock.
Certainly I'm the daughter of Spock thing would have, or not the daughter, the sister of Spock would have seemed incredibly random if they dropped that in, if season 3 was the first. I mean, it was kind of weird in season 1, but boy, would it have been weird in season 3.
What about EMA? So the spore drive wouldn't make sense if you start with season 3.
I don't know if I agree with that, Ian, but I think you're right. It makes more sense.
It took a few episodes to explain that in season 1.
Yeah,
I think
the spore drive doesn't exactly make sense, period. So it needs all the help it can get.
If somebody read a little synopsis of the first 2 seasons, a couple paragraphs, they could probably get pretty up to date and start with season 3, though.
But they'd miss all that good Anson Mount stuff.
What's that?
They'd miss all that good Anson Mount stuff in season 2.
We're gonna get tons of good Anson Mount, Ethan Peck, and Rebecca Romaine stuff pretty soon, as I usually forget, but now I'm reminding you.
I do think what you said that originally they were going to go straight from the mirror universe into the future was an early plan for Discovery's season 1. I think that could have worked. Yeah, I think I like season 2 a lot, but I can't imagine a world where we kind of skip that and it still probably would have worked fairly well without too many problems. But
yeah, the main reason that they postponed that, I think, was just to do the Pike and Spock stuff in season 2. And they told like a story that wasn't all that interesting with the Red Angel and then with Control in Section 31. But we got all that cool like Pike and Enterprise stuff. So I guess it works as like a Strange New Worlds prequel. And but yeah, I think that Discovery definitely has more potential now as a 32nd century show that did as a 23rd century show. And a year ago I wouldn't have thought that I would be admitting to that now. But Brian, what was your overall take on season 3?
Honestly, I had I can't say I had this idea. But when I watched the first season of Gene Roddenberry's Andromeda, and I liked it a lot, but I also thought this could have been an amazing Star Trek series. And I would have loved to seen this done as full-on canonical Star Trek rather than off-brand Star Trek. And that was, something I thought was, and I wanted something new after Deep Space Nine aired. I also had an idea of going back to the beginning and showing the first explorations of Starfleet, but Enterprise did that so badly that I don't feel like it actually got that itch scratched. But so essentially this was the Star Trek series I'd been waiting for ever since Deep Space Nine went off the air. Something really new, something very different, something that really shakes things up, just in the same way Deep Space Nine really shook things up. And I was really excited that we were about everything that I'd seen in the trailers and hinting at for season 3. And I think I feel like I got it all. Everything that I was excited about was actually there in season 3, or has at least been strongly promised in season 4. So yes, I love this season. Definitely my favorite season of Discovery. Might be my favorite season of this new generation of Trek. I don't know. I like Picard a lot, but this I don't know. I probably like this better. It was certainly more smooth and consistent, I felt, than Picard. This was great. I more pleased. So
I kind of agree with that post you just brought up from Diggs Briarthorn Fathery. Says that talking about the secondary cast on Discovery, says the secondary cast is well featured. Reese, Bryce, Detmer, Owoshkin, and Nilsson are tertiary cast at best. They are tiny rungs above DeSalle, Kyle, Riley, and Leslie on TOS.
That's the best way to think of them for sure.
Yeah.
I will say, not only did season 3 manage to add a bunch of new wonderful characters to the show, they also managed to take those kind of quasi lower deckers and give them more to do, I think, than we'd ever really seen them do in season 1 or 2. And that was impressive, that we not only got new characters, but the old background characters got more time to shine. I wouldn't have thought they would have been that would have been possible.
Can I add to that real quick, and then we'll let Dave give his thoughts, or Starfleet Boy, if you have something to say.
No, I was just gonna say it just felt bigger. The season felt bigger. Like we definitely went to more worlds and stuff. That's all.
Well, what Brian was saying about giving like those other characters more stuff to do. I was at the Star Trek Las Vegas panel last year when the Discovery actors were on stage, and the Owoshkin and Reese actors were saying how they would like to do more actiony stuff. And Michelle Paradise was there in the room, and she was like listening to them, and then like in season 3, we had to see them have like that cool knife fight in the Mirror Universe. Their Mirror Universe counterparts are like fighting to the death to see who will be chief of security on the Charon, and they also had like cool actiony stuff to do in the finale when they were the SWAT team running around on the Discovery trying to recapture the ship. So I thought that was really cool.
Bust out double guns.
Yeah, I like that was cool that I had the experience of like see them say that in front of the showrunner, and then she takes note of it and then goes and makes it happen. I thought that was cool to see all that.
You have to see the full scope from rough draft to completion.
Yeah,
Real quick, Owo is played by Oilin Oladejo. Sorry, I just screwed your name up. Sorry.
There's a reason why I didn't attempt to say it. Apologies.
We'll go look it up. We'll find it in an interview and where she pronounces it herself, so we can get it right.
Dave, what about you? Give us your thoughts on Star Trek Discovery Season 3.
If memory serves, I think in that first episode, it started off a little bit rough for me. I wasn't wild about the Burnham kickoff, although it was kind of an energetic episode. But I eased into it pretty happily after that, and finding it one of the stronger seasons overall, maybe at least up until the end. And I do think that the 32nd century is going to prove to be the right home for Discovery. Before that happened, we had talked about how, honestly, I was a little bit worried about both the early question of can they make it that far in the future and still seem like the Trek we know with warp nacelles and phasers and tricorders and stuff. But also, was it going to be okay to chart that canonical future for Trek so far out that is going to be the Trek canon future for, from forevermore from here on? And I was like, well, what if they fuck it up? then everybody is tied into that. Picard and any other show that they do in between is going to have to be sort of leading up to this. But I think that that big thing they pulled off. So I really have to compliment them for that. Along the way, I think that some of the stuff they did sort of what Disco does sometimes, which is they weren't interested in exploring, I think, character stuff, and they weren't exploring some of the ideas like their scarcity, post-burn future, or the nature of Osira's kind of very, I'm going to say not just morally gray. She was a bad person, but she played an interesting role, and I think they could have gone deeper with her. I think what else was there? Stuff like that they brought up, like the traumatic effect of it all on Detmer early on, that kind of got resolved in a sort of hasty way. A lot of that stuff that sort of bugged me, and it all seemed to kind of come to a head a bit at the end. I also wasn't wild about them diverting from the what do you call it, to the mirror universe for 2 episodes. There was stuff I liked in there, but I was still not. I wish they hadn't done it. It did feel like it was purely a setup for that, and didn't really help the season overall. And then it ended with the season finale I did not care for. So unfortunately, it was like, but the getting there was pretty great. Much of the time I was enjoying myself and thinking that I really liked the characterizations and stuff. I think I didn't like quite where the chessboard was at the end. I thought that the Emerald Chain, was like, oh, they've dissolved without Osira. I didn't buy into that. I kind of hope that next season they will reveal that is not the case, maybe.
Yeah, it's good to have a bad guy like the TOS had the Klingons and the Romulans. It's good to have a default
I can't believe that as much of an infrastructure as I presume they've built up over decades, that they that you can take out the leader and it's gone.
Yeah.
And she wasn't even a leader; she was a part of a particular syndicate. Yeah,
She was minister. I would like to see maybe the Emerald Chain kind of like rearranged now, and maybe we get like another big baddie who's maybe the next time we get like an Endorian or maybe like a Ferengi. Maybe there's I'd
be happy to see any of that stuff. I do. They actually we talked about this. They straight up dropped the word capitalism. She was endorsing capitalistic rescue efforts in that next to last episode. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't have minded if they had engaged with that a little bit more, talked about like, would it work as an interim thing? Kind of these tough questions. Could Star Trek step back from its socialistic perspective in order to jumpstart, the economy of the galaxy? Do they want, all of that stuff? I think I would have been a little bit more interested in, but they were it was all more character centric at the end. I don't know. I like, on one level, I'm happy to see Burnham in the command spot, but I was happier to see Saru in that spot. So I have to think even more about this, before the next series, before season 4 starts. But when I talk about the good stuff, I'm very happy with it. When I think about how it ended, I'm like, oh, they kicked me in the nuts at the end. But
they can make it up to you next season by the first bridge that we see in a 32nd century Federation starship is just a lounge with couches, and the computer just does everything. Like they actually just sit around and talk and stuff like that, like Gene Roddenberry envisioned for TNG.
I was about to say that was what TNG Roddenberry originally wanted for the bridge. It literally had couches.
The hotel lobby style. PJ, what you got? What's your take?
Well, I think each season is a little bit better than the last, so I guess logically season 4 will be a little bit better than season 3. It's a show that I've always had the attitude where I could just take it or leave it, but like if it gets renewed, I'm like, cool, let's see what happens next. Mm-hmm. But after season 3, it's the first time I really want to... I think they have the potential to really go into the classic, explore strange new worlds in the 32nd century. I think that makes total sense. And then you do
realize another show is staking out the strange new worlds territory.
Exactly. And I think that's the formula they should go with, because they've been experimenting up until now with like season 1 and season 2. Didn't quite know what they were doing, in my opinion, but they managed to pull something off. This one, I think they desperately wanted to go to a future where canonical issues didn't overwhelm the writing staff, I guess. So they could go to a place where they could create the new canon. And, the technology that they show in this season doesn't exactly feel that far into the future. It almost feels like the 27th or 29th century. You know what I mean?
Well, they hit a speed bump.
Yeah, it's like... But I can understand, with the burn. And, the burn, like that mystery box stuff, it doesn't interest me anymore. I think they should just eliminate overarching season-long mysteries that get resolved at the very end. And by the time that happens, most people have already guessed. Like in the Sukal episode, we already knew it was like, or most people figured it was the grief of a child that caused the burn. And then that reveal in the finale was like so anticlimactic. So, I mean, I like most of the episodes. I don't like episodes 3 and 4 at all. I don't like Unification 3.
What were episodes 3 and 4?
People of Earth and
People
Forget
of
Me
Earth
Not.
And Forget Me Not.
Yeah, it's where they come to Earth, and then after that was the Seed episode, which PJ, those were 2 that I had problems with. Although on rewatch, I was okay with People of Earth. Forget Me Not is still my least favorite of the season.
Yeah, but I didn't have as much to complain about this season as I did previous seasons, and that's a good sign.
One thing I liked about the burn, which was overall a kind of a disappointing mystery that seemed only important because Burnham decided it was important, is that I did like, and I wish they had honestly explored more, and I think they still could, the idea of Starfleet trying to do what it does with fewer resources, and maybe encountering some old Trek civilizations with which we're familiar, and finding out sort of, I mean, we did see it with the Trill, but I wanted to kind of see how it affected them, how, if the Federation can't show up and just promise amazing resources to everybody, well, what can they do? What can they do if they're desperate? What, if they have to be even more innovative than they've ever been before in order to extend a helping hand into the galaxy. And I would like to see, I hope that basically the introduction of Spore Drive stuff at the end of season 1, where they're, helping out, moving supplies to different parts of the galaxy, doesn't essentially mean the difficulties of the burn are over. I'd like to see it still trickling down and interesting effects of it in the next season of this, season 4.
Yeah. Can I add something onto that? Is that I really like in the final scene of the final episode of season 3, when they're going to make dilithium runs to, I guess, resupply some of these worlds. and Tilly says, okay, up on the itinerary, it looks like we have 5 non-Federation and 2 Federation worlds to deliver to, and then 1 starbase. I like that they're not just like bribing people to like, rejoin the Federation with our
You don't have to
dilithium.
be part of the syndicate.
No, they're like giving it to like other people that need it. And I like that. That's not just like, oh, we found dilithium. Now people are going to like us because, we'll give you dilithium if you join the Federation.
Yeah,
Rebuilding the Federation should be like, should take like a little bit more effort and a little bit more work and a little bit more creativity. And I want that to be in season 4.
They should rename the show for season 4 Star Trek Delivery.
Yeah, kind of like Amazon.
Yeah, I will say to PJ's point about the some stuff being perhaps overly foreshadowed. I feel like since season 1 and 2 to me felt like it was not properly foreshadowing its stuff very much at all. I guess Lorca's reveal worked well, but a lot of stuff in those 2 seasons of Discovery, I felt they didn't set up properly. They just kind of seemed to come out, these twists and stuff would come out of left field a lot of times. And so I guess a lot of times in those first 2 seasons, I didn't know what this is supposed to mean. I didn't know what thing I'm supposed to pay attention to, and I didn't know what sort of show or what sort of story we're trying to tell. In season 3, I always felt I knew what sort of show we were trying, what sort of story we were trying to tell, and what sort of things we should be paying attention to. And maybe they overdid the foreshadowing to the point where the reveal of their mysteries, which were certainly the number of which were dialed down, the reveal of them was a little predictable. But I like that better than some of just the weird gonzo stuff that they came up with as far as reveals in some of the other episodes that I just felt were like, okay, where the hell did that come from? It at least made sense. And so I kind of enjoyed the fact. I'm willing to forgive them if it was perhaps a little overly predictable, just because it felt more well constructed.
I just want to say
Or go ahead, PJ.
I just want to say one last thing about what I really like about this season, and it's just the excessive use of light flare and just going too crazy with the camera all the time and trying to be so dynamic and so clever. They've toned that down significantly in this season, and things are framed much better. The cinematography in general is more reminiscent of Picard, which I don't like Picard, but I'll give it that. It is well shot. So
they had to get out a little bit of fanciness with some spinning cameras in that season finale, though.
Yeah, I can't pronounce his name, but that director loves doing that. If you watch every episode he's directed, he does that almost in every one.
Move. And he's the head director, so he's the one who sets up like all of the toys and techniques for the other directors to be able to use.
That was kind of first.
I tell you what, I can't wait till they use the volume on Star Trek. Period, like that technology.
Well, I'm hoping that they can use that. We're talking about the AR wall that they use in the other Star franchise on their TV show. Now is going to be or is currently being adopted. They've either already set it up, or last I heard they were working on it. They were shooting other things right now, and then they were about to start using that. That was a week or 2 ago when I heard that. So they might be using it now up in Toronto on Discovery Season 4. So
I think it's also it was either Jill or Stress Free K that pointed out how crazy or serendipitous it was that Discovery just lined up with this kind of like crazy real life year. And I was even thinking as I was rewatching and just reflecting further, like even just the whole thing about the burn being this thing that was caused, but that it's like patient zero, right? Like in a weird way, right? Like
it isolated people throughout the galaxy.
It isolated people, and it's not an infection but it did eradicate technology. It set people back a year. Some people saying realistically we're really going to be set back like a couple or maybe 3 years, and there's people that aren't experiencing the full school experience, like kids that aren't going to experience the full school experience. Like all
They're in the Detmer place.
Yeah, exactly. There's all kinds of milestones and just normalities that we've gotten used to, and then all of a sudden that's been disrupted. So what's the next? And it's going to shape the next 100 years of humanity. Period. Like this pandemic, this burn, if you will, in real life. So it's just lined up really well with its themes, like to be able to reflect what's going on. I know that was a stretch to compare the burn to the pandemic, but
I think it's very apt.
Yeah, I was going to make the same point here in my notes that they made a series, they made the season about connections and lack of connections and the importance of connections, and that is kind of what, for a lot of people, that's what COVID turned. Not for everyone, but for a lot of people, COVID's the biggest effect of COVID is the severing of connections.
Yeah, the isolation that a lot of people have felt. And I just want to say that, like, having all of the Star Trek to talk about the last 12 months. And doing Tex-Trek with all of you and with all of our audience and everyone who has been part of the conversation, or even people that just listen to us, it's been a really unique experience for me, because this has been kind of like the highlight of my week, is looking forward to Friday just so I can like talk about Star Trek with everyone. And it's definitely been the way like I've been making those connections, and I'm kind of sad that this is the last live stream we're going to do for a while. We do have some new content coming out, and I'll talk about that when we close out the show in a few minutes. But so just stay with me, and I'll tell you all what's in store in the future. But yeah, this is definitely like kind of closing the chapter on at the end of like this 23 weeks of Star Trek, and it's kind of like a bittersweet moment for me right now as we were recording this. But that ending with the quote from Gene Roddenberry about we're all aliens on strange new worlds, and we're really fortunate if we are able to really communicate and connect with just a couple other people. When I watched the whole season again, like this last week, like for whatever reason, like that ended on like a stronger note with me, and I think like more like the intended emotion and impact was really there when I was rewatching the season as a whole.
Yeah, I love that quote, and I think they did a good job. I mean, connections is, you could argue, is shooting fish in a barrel as far as setting up a reoccurring theme, because so much of storytelling is about the importance of connections between characters. So, there's a certain Rorschach ink blot thing that you can see. Oh, this season was about connections, and that season was about connection. But especially once they highlight it at the end of the final episode, you can look back and say, yes, there's a very deliberate, consistent theme about the importance of connections. And the problems it causes if you don't have those connections all the way through the season. And I like that cohesiveness that I felt I was missing in season 1 and 2 of Discovery.
Right. Like season 1, I guess season 1 was about self-reflection, and it was about like owning up to your mistakes when you make mistakes, and, like overcoming them, and like looking at the man or the woman or the person in the mirror. The mirror universe motif and all that, but like owning your mistakes and overcoming them. That's kind of like the season 1 theme. Season 2, I was told that it was supposed to be like science versus faith. But okay, if that makes sense to you, cool.
That was actually about the audience having faith in the absurdity of the story.
And the absurdity of the science of like the time crystal.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I get it now. But season 3, I love that it does have like this very clear message that it's telling, and about like those those connections, like moving past trauma collectively as a group. And from like the very beginning, Burnham and Book, when they literally crash into each other's lives. And he's a loner, and he doesn't want anything. He's like, I don't even want to know your name and stuff. But like they form this bond, this connection, with really incredibly great chemistry between two good-looking people, because it's TV and whatever. But then you have like the crew that shows up when the ship crashes into the 32nd century, and their kind of collected bonds that they form, and like movie night and stuff. And all that stuff with Colbert, and he was so great this season. But yeah, like that idea of like like we're able to overcome these tragedies by banding together. And that was Osira's tragic flaw, was that she was almost there. Like, she tried to forge a relationship with the Federation, and she wasn't willing to negotiate with their terms, and because she wouldn't form those bonds, wouldn't form that connection, it led to her, I guess, downfall.
And she was completely delusional. Like, completely. And she's a sociopath, so you can't expect.
Yeah,
it's
like some of that stuff could
trying
have
to
been
talk to
written a little
Saddam
better,
Hussein. It's not going to work out.
Yeah.
But there is a clear message. Like the stuff with Sukal and Saru, and about like this kid had like no one to cope with, and he was just isolated. And for them to heal the Federation, I think the whole idea of like how like the burn worked, that like he screamed into subspace, and it was like a sound wave in subspace that blew up all the dilithium. I think that's pretty hokey, but the thematics of it, that by Saru and Kolber making that connection with him, that is what moved him past his trauma, and that's what allows the rest of the galaxy, to be saved.
No,
it
works.
I don't know if I need season-wide thematics as much as we talk about it a lot, and I think I like it when it lines up. But when I think about some of the other serial shows I've liked, and we've talked about like Buffy or Firefly, some of those Whedon ones that they usually build up to some confrontation with a big bad. But if I said, well, what was the theme of season 1 of Firefly? There's a lot of stuff floating around in there, rebuilding yourself, suffering through loss or whatever. But I don't know that I necessarily am as worried about coherent season themes as I am strong writing throughout. And that's I think what I was stumbling over the writing stuff sometimes on this show.
Well, I think if you're going to do a story arc over the season, then that theme thing becomes a lot more important. I mean, what is the theme of a season of Next Generation? That's probably pretty hard to pin down. And I think anything you saw there would just be sort of a bit of an unconscious pattern on the behalf of the writers.
Well, if you look at like something a little more modern that uses the serial format, like a Game of Thrones or any of the big
Game
HBO
of Thrones doesn't show
shows.
like season by season stories, though. Game of Thrones counts as like one long 8-season story.
Right, but I think you actually could still pick out themes that rise up during the seasons. And to some degree, Discovery, although it's not planning to, like have like a big season finale, I guess in that sense, will ultimately do that same thing. It will kind of be the life of these crew members over the course of 7 seasons or whatever we get out of it. I guess what I would just say is like, it still seems to me that a coherent season-wide theme isn't what I would want like as the driving force of the show. It doesn't matter to me as much.
I certainly can appreciate how beautiful it is. I will admit you don't need that to make a good season, and arguably it doesn't automatic. It doesn't, and I think you're right. That alone doesn't automatically make a good season, though it might make the season more forgivable for a person like me. I might be more willing to overlook this and that problem if they at least, they did do this other beautiful thing with this story.
Yeah.
Well,
I do think, oddly, despite this being Star Trek at its most weird, like, we're in this whole new century, all the rules are different, it also felt more like Star Trek comfort food in a way, in that there's a very strong sense of, no, these are the good guys. They're going to come up with a good solution. There is this sense of the Federation. You never really doubt that the Federation is a force for good.
Yeah. I was about to bring that up. One of my favorite things of the season was the lack of Sinister in Starfleet.
Yes.
I personally agree. When on the rewatch, I'm seeing, like, now that I'm more relaxed, but I have to say that Discovery and conditioned me so hard to like to be suspicious that I was waiting for that moment. But do
you remember I said if Admiral I didn't think he was really bad, but if Admiral Vance was bad, there's probably going to be a scene where him and Osira meet up, and like in front of everybody else they're really hostile, and then they go in a room and they instantly start doing it. It's like, yeah, baby, our plan is coming to fruition.
Yeah, just like Laurel and Tyler.
Yeah. I was thinking about it. I was like, when was the last time we had the Federation presented this unambiguously good? And I guess Star Trek Beyond, the Federation was unambiguously good, a force for good in that. I don't know if anyone all that much cared about the Federation's ethical qualities in Star Trek 09, and certainly we had all sorts of problems with the Federation in Star Trek Into Darkness. So then you end up kind of going all the way back to like Voyager to find something like that. And I thought that was, we've had that one blip of, because even Discover or even Lower Decks, as we talked about, kind of had this message about, it concluded with this message that the Federation has a tendency to drop these balls after they get them. And that was, and show that Starfleet is kind of incompetent in Lower Decks, that we don't get that. So I guess perhaps because the setting was so new, they wanted to give us some stuff that was very reassuring. But I think that's what we all needed this year. So yay.
Yeah.
No, I can definitely agree with that. And what PJ is saying earlier about like the new technology that they added for this 32nd century was one of the things that made me a little bit nervous, but I think handled a lot of that well. I would just like to see like a little bit more of it. Like they gave us, what all did they give us? They had like the floating chairs, the programmable matter, the Tricom badge. I thought was like really cool.
Detached nacelles.
Yeah.
I do miss like I've been rewatching Enterprise. Oh, actually, sorry, watching Enterprise. A lot of the episodes are new, and the space battles are pretty good. And there's just like a lot of close-ups and detail, and the CG's starting to fall apart after so many years. But I have to admit that that would be my one big thing for season 4, and my one big continuing critique of Discovery is that there's just not enough ship stuff. And I know, like I'm happy to trade it for like the really great drama and everything like that, but I think we can just get maybe like 2% more, dial it up to like 2% more, and just give us maybe 1 or 2 real good close-up beauty shots of these other ships, not just the disco.
That was one of the things that made me frustrated, is when they show us all these 32nd century ships for the first time, and it's like the lights are turned off. It's like, I want to see them. Like, what's the point of like them? There's more stuff to look forward to in season 4. I guess I'd like to see a lot more of that type of stuff.
We also get to see that they've made the Discovery bigger on the inside than on the outside with their new technology.
Get to see that. We got to see that for
You know what, though? If you cut out a few shots of the bigger on the inside turbo lift room or city or planet, turbo lift planet, if you cut that out, and then if you cleaned up a little bit stuff in die trying, I didn't like a lot of the stuff that happened on that Seed Vault ship. And then if you didn't try to go like as crazy big action movie stuff with like the fight with Osira, and then like, well, what if the warp core explodes and doesn't blow us up? Like Dave was poking fun at last week. That really irked me too. But like, if I just like cleaned up like those few things, this would have been like a really, really great season of Star Trek for me. Those are kind of like the only criticisms I had upon like watching for another go around.
I was just thinking, I have a question about the burn. Was the burn, like I understand the causes kind of hazy as they were in the show of it, but is there, was it the result of any sort of incompetence or hubris or fallibility, or was it just bad luck?
Just bad luck.
I mean, superficially, just bad luck.
It's kind of a bad story.
But if you actually pay attention, there's this idea that they didn't go rescue that ship, and that
you're right.
The kid sat around on that ship for at least 4 years before the burn was triggered, and they had 4 years to rescue that ship, and they didn't. And they don't really hang a lantern on it and say, darn, if only we'd done that. But if you actually look at the story they tell, that's clearly where the ball was dropped.
Why did they not rescue it?
I'm just.
We don't know.
I'm-
There was a ship in range. There was a ship going to rescue it, and they never got to it. And maybe it was lost in the nebula, but we don't really know what happened. And then like the
In the
burn
briar
happened.
patch.
Yeah, unfortunately, those are all that haziness means that it's. I feel like as a triggering incident, like it needed to it needed to have something that was like a more of like that had a dramatic element to it, as far as someone clearly through neglect, ineptitude, bitterness, anger, something that we were maybe now seeing that had been solved in the 30 seconds.
Would this have fixed it for you? If they we looked up in the records and Starfleet decided, because they said they were already running short on dilithium before the burn.
Right.
If they'd had Starfleet decided it wasn't economical to send a rescue ship.
I think that would have been interesting. I mean, it probably would have been understandable and not really even that would have been something where I wouldn't have been like, well, Starfleet clearly screwed up. More like, God, they were in a hard spot, and maybe they were saving somebody else.
Well, I think with Federation, well, I'll let.
I was just gonna say, I think it's curious that the Vulcans for so long attributed their experiments with SB-19 to the cause of the burn, and even after it was kind of like determined that it was not likely. So I wonder if indeed there was some, like what you were saying, like there was already a strain, and so all those things caused the burn, right? Like it's just unfortunate that it happened to be Sukal who was the victim of it, but and then that's the redemption, I guess. Like
for me,
they're rewarded with a dilithium planet.
Well, that's kind of just a convenient fix, which is not great. But I think for me, it actually works better as it being bad luck. If that's the theme is like overcoming tragedy. I mean, sometimes bad shit. Sometimes there's a global pandemic, and I mean, there's people at fault for making it worse. But largely, a lot of it was sadly unpreventable. It's and sometimes there's just going to be sad things that happen that it's more important of not what caused it, but how you react to it.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
I guess the reason I suggested that is there's another sort of undercurrent of dilithium as money and the importance of money versus the kind of socialism of the Federation. And if if this was a brought about because the Federation made an economic decision rather than a socialist decision, then that would have sort of thematically played back into some of the stuff Osira brought to the table with her negotiations and stuff.
Yeah, that would have been pretty cool.
If they were doing a deeper dive with Osira in those last few episodes, I think that could have made for a more potent finale. Basically the reveal about Sokal's tragedy would go beyond just the mystery of what caused this angst for him, to have some consequences, something to chew on as far as thinking about their current status and what makes the Federation, and what's right versus what's economical. And I think I would have liked more wrestling with that, and that I think I would have preferred that.
Well, just to close things out, I just kind of like to ask if anyone has anything that they really loved or that they really hated in the season, and then we'll just go ahead and wrap things up. But we actually have a guest has entered the room.
What?
We're actually now joined by
he knows a lot about burns,
by Dr. Tolian Soren. From Star Trek Generations. We know he knows a lot about trilithium. I don't know what he knows about dilithium and the burn that caused it.
I'm a fan of Soren.
Yeah, Doctor, let us know what your thoughts are on what we're talking about.
Well, I don't like the burn. No, I can't do it. My voice is groggly.
You were doing it.
Dilithium is the fire in which
we burn. I should have done that.
My final thoughts, I guess, are that some of the things I really liked was I loved Terra Firma, even though it was detached from the main story arc. I love the way that Discovery handles the mirror universe. I know some people don't get into that stuff, but I love it. I like the Giorgio stuff, and I'm actually looking forward to the Section 31 show now. I never thought that character could be redeemed for me, but now I'm really curious to see what they do with her. And I love seeing the Guardian of Forever and like using the continuity like that. I also really liked bringing back the Trill for the same reasons. And in that episode, I thought it had like a strong opening with that like action-packed adventure with Michael and Book, and just Book was such a treasure this season. I think everyone loves him. I haven't seen like people love to complain about Star Trek on the internet. I haven't seen like one bad word about Book. Everyone seems to love him universally. Yeah. So that's cool.
But, I think some people, and I do kind of agree with this, they miss roguish Book from the early episodes. And I kind of do too.
I didn't see a huge change in his personality between the beginning and the
episode. Pushed us to want him to seem more roguish.
Dave wants the I do not want your acquaintance. That's the way.
No, I like him at the end where he becomes like I like that idea of like Starfleet, when like these people that are back from like Starfleet's prime, when they're brought in like this future where Starfleet has been like kicked in the balls and is weakened, they're like so cool that like this guy Book, who all he knew was like Starfleet is like the failure, like this remnant of the past. He's like, oh, this is like actually really awesome. I want to be a part of what these people are doing. And then he ends up with like a role on the ship. I guess he's like the backup Spore man now. I think like Stamets is backup or whatever. We'll see that explored in season 4, I suppose. But
he also gets to fly the Delta Flyer.
Yeah, his ship that doesn't have a name.
The Nautilus. No, it's called
Nautilus. Its name. It's not its name.
How do you know?
Because do you know when they say that in the show?
Yes.
When do they say it?
When he's requesting permission to go to the sanctuary planet, he says Nautilus. Wait, what are you gonna say?
That's like part of his security password, I think, because they never say that word again. Like Memory Alpha just calls it Book shit.
Sure?
Like no one else calls it the Nautilus. Because I thought the same thing too, but I think it's part of like a security password.
If you Google Nautilus Star Trek Discovery, by the way, his ship comes up. Just man, lots of people think that.
Yeah, I no, that's what I was hoping was the case, but now it seems to not be. But that was I like the stuff with Book. The things that I didn't like, I think, was kind of the way that they were kind of meandering Burnham's trajectory. How like she's been like this courier with Book, and then she doesn't know if she wants back on the ship. And I really liked her like not being like the tragic character who's like depressed and crying all the time and has just like the weight of the world on her shoulder, like, oh, I started this Klingon war, like, oh no, like I've ruined my brother's life, and like all this. I liked her being like a little bit of a happier character, but then they're like, oh, but like she can't get her shit together, wants to break the rules, but like, oh, now she's actually like the best person to command the ship or whatever. I'm not sure what to expect of Burnham as the captain, but I think it's kind of a clean slate also, and that's going to be up to season 4 to define for me. I just wish that would have been like a little bit of a clearer arc. But
I did think, after spending some time rolling around Captain Michael Burnham in my head, I realized she did earn it. She, again and again, came up with the big ideas, and the ideas were on a scale that she needed to be a freaking captain of a ship to properly execute them. And so, and the ideas were important. What she achieved with this uncovering the source of the burn was crucial. Even if they hadn't found a planet full of dilithium, it still would have been very good to defuse that potential bomb from going off again. And so she was making the right call that we need to figure this out and make sure it doesn't happen again. And it ended up reaping more benefits, but that's just kind of a symbolic storytelling thing that if you do the right thing, you'll be rewarded in ways you weren't expecting. And so I was like, my frustration is more of not that Michael doesn't deserve to be captain or probably wouldn't function better in Starfleet if she has the autonomy of her own ship, but that I really liked Captain Saru, and I don't want to give that up. And I like Saru a lot.
He was a very different kind of captain, and I enjoyed his captaincy as well. I do think Burnham is interesting because in some ways she's closer to Kirk than we've seen in a little while in her kind of maverickness.
She's kind of like Kirk and Spock combined into one person.
Yeah.
Right. Diggs, I just want to say your reputation will be your currency, as has been stated in Star Trek before.
All right.
Triple will be currency. Oh, by the way, I do want to throw out, even though it had some elements that ended up kind of falling apart a little bit, I liked the Emerald Chain. They had a dope name. They brought Andorians and Orions back to the forefront, kind of keying clearly off of the Orion Syndicate of old, but, at a new level. I wish they had done more with them, but I liked them as a sort of persistent threat and throughout, running their Amazon assembly lines and all that.
Yeah, they had like the slave workers and everything. Like we saw, like were they
I think
enslaved?
they could have leaned further into that, and I would have been happy.
Yeah,
How
I
great would it have
think
been if
they can
Emerald
do
Chain
that.
had a
in
logo
season
like
4.
the Amazon arrow, but in green. That would have been
It's
really
like that smiley face.
Yeah.
Like a happy chain link of sorts.
Yes.
Another thing I can compliment the show on is like some of the things I think they did successfully, like foreshadow, like Brian was mentioning. Like I don't know if y'all remember, but in some of the early episodes, I was like, something's going on with Tilly. Like her and Saru are having like these conversations, and they don't feel like captain and ensign. It's almost like captain and first officer. And it when they did do like that big crazy thing, like make the ensign acting first officer, I thought they actually had laid some groundwork to like making that a more natural thing. So
and Audrey, on top of that, I think they also reacted well to it. Like the show itself, within the show, the characters were kind of perturbed by it. So I thought it was, upon rewatch, it lands better.
Yeah. I think they put in more thought and effort into like some of the little stuff like that, than in seasons 1 and 2.
Yes, I think as far as my favorite episode was the one where they go to Trill. What's the title?
Forget Me Not.
Forget Me Not. I adored that episode. Might very well be my favorite episode of this new generation of Trek thus far. And I'll admit that a lot of it's pushing my buttons of the favorite things I like to see in my science fiction. But and so whether it earned it or whether it was just a unique form of Brian fan service is a fair question. But I loved that one. I didn't think there was a bad episode. I was not wildly disappointed with the final episode. I don't think it was their strongest one, but I liked all the episodes this season. I didn't have a major problem with anything other than that stupid turbolift scene. I liked the first 2 episodes. I thought were very strong. I liked how they handled the reintroduction of the Federation. I largely felt the season was kind of going straight from strength to strength. I guess my book's home planet was the episode that felt most paint by numbers to me. It wasn't even bad. It just kind of felt like it was very mechanically unfolding in a very predictable way.
Yeah, the Sanctuary. And they keep teasing like more to Book's backstory. Like he keeps talking about like there's the story about how I got my name, but I'm not going to tell you yet. You have to wait till season 4.
And maybe that episode will get much more interesting once we know the more about Book and his brother and all of that stuff and how that's all went.
I would like to know if there's more than 10 people on their planet.
Well, I guess just final thoughts is that there's a lot of questions about season 4. What's Saru's role going to be? How is Michael going to be captain and stuff? But I think in some ways, even though like I like Lower Decks more than Discovery, but in some ways I'm kind of looking more forward to Discovery because I'm just curious to see what happens in the next season. And the thing I want to point out is that I think both of these seasons of these shows, they kind of end on the note that they kind of like use one of the characters on the show to kind of describe what that entire show is. Like when Admiral Vance tells Burnham that story of his daughter and how like she learned to do math with pictures instead of numbers, and like she did things like her way, and that wasn't the wrong way. It was just, that was just her way, and that's what Discovery is. Discovery does things its own way. It's unique. It's weird. It's probably the most unique uniquest Star Trek show. I think even like Lower Decks, animated comedy, yeah, half-hour format, but Lower Decks, it does kind of feel like the same world as, like Berman era Star Trek. Like Picard, it is a guy from Berman era story. Like if we saw that guy like a couple decades later, So yeah, like I think Discovery is like the weirdest, most unique, and it's like the Michael Burnham of the Star Treks. It's like it's going to do things its own way, and it's going to be. It is like that more emotional show, that more like cryy, like huggy, like everyone stand up and clap type. But it kind of just like wears its emotions on its sleeve, and even though I think it does a little bit too much of that, leans into it too much, it's not embarrassed about it. And like with Lower Decks, that's kind of they get that. Lower Decks, you get like that conversation between Captain Freeman and Mariner about how that's kind of like the one that's kind of like on the outskirts. That's kind of like not as much oversight. Like I don't think Alex Kurtzman is like over Mike McMahon's shoulder like he has Michelle Paradise. That's kind of like the little oddball. It's like the little weirdo USS Cerritos that no one's paying attention to. They can just kind of like go off and do the crazy things it wants to do and be good at that. So they're kind of both summed up with like a description of the show itself in their finales.
For me, it's both the strength and the weakness of Discovery, that it's a little bit meandering in finding its themes, because it also is kind of exciting to me, and that it means that. Yeah, in a few months after I get over the sting of the finale for me and maybe revisit it, I'm going to start thinking about, what's Burnham going to be like as a captain? Are we going to start seeing more interaction maybe with some of the Arrested Bridge crew? What's Adira's role going to be in the next season, and what are they going to do with Gray? And by the way, I forgot to mention, this is one of my happiest sort of things for the season, is that I did really like seeing Stamets and Culber in their really pretty stable relationship, and further stabilizing, I guess, as they sort of bring some adopted kids into their fold. And so I did really like that. But yeah, I'm going to start, thinking about those exciting things that we might get next season, and know that whatever I think they might do is probably not going to quite be what I get, no matter what. It's going to surprise me, and that is kind of exciting.
For sure. And I love like the Culber Stamets family, just Dr. Culber himself. Like they really figured out like some cool stuff to do with him, where he didn't have like as huge of a role in the first two seasons. He's more of just like Stamets' partner who gets killed, and then he's the guy who they have to go rescue from the mycelium network, and then he has like this weird anger issues and he just is an asshole the rest of the season. But like him being like the more proactive, like ship's counselor guy, like that stuff was great. I love Dr. Culber in this third season.
I think that they showed that you can have a couple and you don't need to dynamically break them up or kill anybody off to involve them in dynamic and dramatic situations.
The thing I was most nervous about with Gray, I even like the way they wrapped that up and kind of making it that Gray is an actual entity, and that like if a Holo program can recognize Gray, then that means Gray is something more than a ghost or a there's something to it, and I like that, and I think it's going to be interesting how they solve that problem. Father, I think, suggested that what if it was just the computer being glitchy, that's the way the technology was somehow able to read him or pick him up, and that's really sad, but I kind of love that because it means they'll have to work really hard to try to solve that problem.
Well, there's an example of new tech that we have a holodeck computer that can read your mind well enough to extract different personalities and construct them. That's some super tech that we haven't seen in Starfleet before.
Well, I have some sad news to end the show on, but it's going to be followed with some good news. But there will be no Tex-Trek podcast next week or the week after that. We're taking 2 weeks off. We actually put out like a new podcast episode every week for 27 weeks straight.
Wow,
which is the most we've ever done. Weekly. So it's been a lot of fun. It's also like a lot of work for me. I think it's like an extra like 10 hours of work every week for me.
You're Admiral.
You deserve a vacation.
Like I'm just gonna take like a little bit of time off away from Star Trek and like watch some other shows. Like I want to see Cobra Kai season 3, and a new season of like Transformers War for Cybertron, and maybe like read some comic books again. But there is good news though. I'm probably going to do like a live Monday afternoon. Just a weird live stream. I think PJ is going to be there. I'm not sure who else might show up, but yeah, we're just going to talk about what would be some ideas for like the next Star Trek movie. I might just do like these casual live streams from time to time. We'll see like if people show up Monday for that. And in addition to that, we will be resuming Tex-Trek podcasts weekly for the month of February. We're going to do something really cool. Still on Friday nights, we're going to be premiering recorded podcast videos, and they'll also be available in audio format wherever you get your podcast. We're going to have 4 different guests, a different guest every week for the entire month of February. Already have like the first 3 guests scheduled to record something with us. And yeah, I'm still working on the 4th, but I'm very excited, and I'm looking forward to bringing these people out. I don't know if I should say who they are yet, but I guess I'll go ahead and mention the first one. The first week of February, we will have my good friend Larry Nemechek will be boarding the Starship Texas to talk about the state of the Star Trek franchise at this point. Coming off of 2020 and going into 2021, and then we have like a couple other guests after that. But I'll go ahead and say like the next one after that, we will have Jesse Gender on board Tex-Trek. So one of my favorite Star Trek YouTubers, who's a very, very talented content creator, and also has like a very unique voice that I'm glad is added to like the choir of Star Trek fans that are always like screaming our opinions on the internet. I'm so glad to have Jesse's voice as part of that. So I'm definitely looking forward to like this new stuff we have going on. Thank you everyone though who has been like part of like this 23-week adventure and has been listening to us or in the live audience. A lot of the people that I see regularly, Stress Free K, Michael Stepniak, Jill Diggs, the Blue.
Yeah, I definitely wanted to mention that this is our first season of our first seasons, I guess, of Tex-Trek where we've done live streams on Fridays instead of recordings that you do post-production on and post a few days later. And I love seeing interacting with the comments and seeing what people are thinking in real time and seeing what they say that prompts us maybe in different directions while we're talking and stuff like that. So to me, that's super cool. We're trying to make those same connections that save the universe from the burn.
For sure, yeah. And we'll be doing more of the stuff whenever they put out more new Star Trek. I think we're going to do this live format to podcast on those because it is so much fun with the live audience. But people who listen to us later, after the fact, we appreciate you too. And I love to get your feedback if you want to comment on the YouTube videos or tweet at me or send me an email. I love hearing everything that y'all have to say as well. But yeah, on that note, I think that's it. We're gonna close off on this era of Tex-Trek and have like a little 2-week hiatus in the podcast episodes. I'll still do a stream on Monday, and we'll see what else happens. If there's any breaking news, I'll put out some content to talk about that. So keep subscribed to the YouTube channel, and you won't miss any of that. Starfleet Boy, though, has something going on later tonight that he's going to tell us about right now. What's happening on Starfleet Boy After Dark?
Thank you. To celebrate tomorrow's TOS discussion for Space Seed, tonight we're going to do a watch along for The Wrath of Khan, and it's going to be a drinking watch along. So we're going to synchronize our copies of Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan. It's going to be very no precision, and then
I don't have Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan.
What?
I don't collect physical media.
Do you not have it anywhere? You can't get it anywhere. You have half an hour.
The only thing Star Trek I have is the first 2 seasons of TNG on Blu-ray.
You're gonna have to read along. Find the script online and read along.
Isn't it streaming someplace? I mean, CBS All Access.
What's funny? On all the streaming services, Crave never has the movies. Netflix always has like the Kelvin movies and maybe like Insurrection or Nemesis, and then Prime will have like 5 motion picture and like Nemesis. So you'll never see Wrath of Khan on any of these streaming services.
The Wrath of Khan
or even
is on...
Search for Spock, or even fucking Voyage Home.
There's all three of those, I think, are on Hulu in the United States, but y'all don't have Hulu, right?
In Canada, it's so hard to get those movies on streaming. They've never been together anywhere.
I do remember 5 or 6 years ago, they had all the Star Trek films. Well, they didn't have the JJ stuff. They had all the other Star Trek films on Netflix at once, but everyone was making a big deal about it because it was such a rare occurrence.
Not in Canada.
Okay,
no.
Yeah. No. And I don't think, I don't know what the situation is these days. I own them on disc, so I never bother with that.
PJ, if you've seen it enough times, I think you could still have fun if you come on the stream. And then afterwards, we'll just do our usual.
Wrath of Khan. What's that one about? It's
Khan gets angry.
I think that's the one where like Riker gets poisoned or something, and then like it turns into like a clip episode. It's just like all those clips from like earlier episodes.
There's audience members at home who watch on TV. They're not going to watch it. They're just watching it to hear us react. So maybe you can just.
Isn't it the one where the bad guy wants to do Kirk because he's like he tasks me and I'll have him. So what was that about?
That's the one. I'll chase him around the moons of Nivea and around the Antares maelstrom.
To get in that ass.
Before I give him up.
All right. Well, that's some Starfleet Boy After Dark territory we're venturing off into. But I'll just go ahead and I'm reluctant to hit like the end of broadcast because this is the last Friday night stream we're doing for a while. But
the 3K is saying Wrath of Khan is on Pluto.
There you go, Pluto.
Yeah,
so there you go, PJ.
Pluto doesn't exist in Canada.
Oh, sorry. It's no longer a planet.
It's been erased in Canada. Wrath of Khan. It's too much.
Well, as the season finale of Next Generation season 7, or the series finale, I should say, as the series finale of Star Trek: The Next Generation said, "All good things. ... And this stream, this 23 weeks of Star Trek that we have covered must come to an end.
Again, somebody says Wrath of Khan is on CBS All Access. Again, even the Canadian version of CBS All Access does not have that. It's such a crappy version of the American version.
Father, you're Picard in the first episode of the Picard show. I don't want the game to end.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on for these 20. Well, not all 23 weeks, but for a huge chunk of them. So it's been a real joy to
Yes, thanks for having me as well.
And I'm sure all the people here will return in the future.
I'll do my last interrupt for this season. Father and I watched old episodes of Tex-Trek. I know that's really nerdy, but we were cracking up. So if you guys really want to go and like just explore the Tex-Trek content in the next 2 weeks before Tex-Trek comes back, I think you're going to have a great time.
Yeah, we could see when my hair was shorter and Dave had a beard because he was the Harvey Bullock.
And you're in the same room.
Man, yeah. That was back when humans could meet.
Yeah, in the before time. But until next time, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek. And follow Fathery on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.